Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest episode of the member series of ITSS Verona from the Latin America team. In this recording session, we'll be speaking to Maria Zuppello, a Latin American expert and analyst and researcher based in Brazil. Thanks for coming, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so thank us everyone for being here, and let's start off. The first question. Hi, Maria. So we've seen a sudden explosion of street gang-related violence in Ecuador in January that operated like a terrorist modus operandi. Taking over a TV station, attacking random civilians. What are the reasons behind all this mess? I mean, was this wave of violence predictable?
Yes, for sure. I mean, it's not a new topic in Ecuador, but we have to see that the reason of this recent mass is the escape from prison of Adolfo Macias, known as Fito, who is the leader of Los Choneros, a criminal gang from Ecuador, associated with the Mexican Sinaloa cartel. And then, I think in the same week, we had another escape, the escape of Fabricio Colompico, known as the Savage, Boss of los Lobos, another criminal group associated with another Mexican cartel, Jalisco Nueva Generación. That's why the government declared the war on organized crime and designated 22 criminal groups in Ecuador terrorist groups. This designation led to an implementation of the army all around the country. So this designation allowed the army to work on this war and to kill when it was necessary to kill. But this recent mass is just the latest moment of violent episodes that over the recent years, destroyed the quality of life in Ecuador. Why? Let's highlight that Ecuador doesn't produce cocaine, but it has become a hub for drug trafficking, not only to Europe, but also to the United States. And during the pandemic, Ecuador has been used as a kind of warehouse for all criminal groups and drug Mexican cartels. It explains why tons and tons of cocaine after the pandemic were sent from Ecuador to Europe and the United States. Why Ecuador is so crucial in the criminal landscape of Latin America? Let's remind that with the disbandment of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, FARC, in 2016, coca bush fields in Colombia have been moving closer to the border, leading to an increased drug trafficking activity in the region. Just to have a sense of it, between 2019 and 2022, Ecuador's police seized around 700 tons of drugs. And the drug trafficking came with a lot of violence. In 2022, fatalities doubled to around 5,000. And only in the Guayaquil metropolitan district, between 2021 and 2022, the homicide rate increased by 61%. Last year, let's remind the assassination of presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio showed that drew international attention to the severe security crisis. Fernando Villavicencio was an investigative journalist before to candidate itself for presidency. And it was the guy that denounced the threats from Fito. So as you can see, the story is all connected. Another point that is very important to stress is that Ecuador is still attractive to its because of its limited territorial extensions and well-connected road infrastructure that allows cross-border movement in under 12 hours. And also its navigable coastal profile enables the launching of vessels from any point. Also, the lack of robust control over its maritime and air territories makes easier for aircraft and vessels to depart from terminals with little security. And just one more information that provide us the sense of the issue. Only 2 ports in Ecuador before the chaos that happened in January, only 2 ports, the ports of Manta and Posoria, have scanners in Ecuador. So you can understand that it's very easy for the traffickers to go undetected. Also, we have to add to this scenario that the country's use of US dollar as currency and also law banking penetration make it easier to carry out illicit activities and money laundering transaction. Money laundering is very common in Ecuador. Just to have an idea, there was just only 1 indictment last year for money laundering. So you can see how hard it is to get a control on it.
Thank you, Maria. That's super helpful information. For our next question, how do regional and global trends intersect with local factors in Ecuador, amplifying the challenges in addressing organized crime? Ecuadorian gangs are supposedly collaborating with Mexican cartels and the Albanian mafia. What's your opinion on this situation?
Yes, Ecuador is very interesting because actually it's a mirror of international cocaine trade. Let's start from the Italian criminal groups, the 'Ndrangheta mafia. 'Ndrangheta is very present in Ecuador without being present. I mean, because actually we can track the last important case involving a 'Ndrangheta member only in 2013 when Valentino Alampi, who is a prominent member of the Alampi Calabrese clan, was arrested in Guayaquil, but only on money laundering charges. Why since 2013 there was no more arrest in Ecuador? Because 'Ndrangheta changed his way of operating and started trying a kind of post for this outsourcing. It means using brokers and criminal networks from Albania and Serbia who have been active in Ecuador since 2009 to supply Italian mafias in Europe. As you know, 'Ndrangheta already works with Albanian criminal groups in Europe, but in Ecuador it was the right choice because Albanian drug traffickers are very reliable, are very violent, so they can handle a violent environment as Ecuador is. Albanians over the years have grown in prominence and they were favorized by politics. Why? Because in 2008, former President Correa decided to change the constitution. And the new constitution, he created the status of universal citizenship, which means that he abolished visa for entry into the country. So starting from 2009, hundreds of Albanian criminals arrived in Ecuador because it was the right place to handle the cocaine trafficking and to establish in the country without police control. Because another choice that Correa made was to allow to make a kind of privatization of personnel working at the airports. So actually, there was no control in terms of criminal backgrounds check, and it allowed a lot of Albanians to move to Ecuador. Many of them, we can count around 3,000 Albanians members in Ecuador. Many of them set up banana operations because, as you know, Ecuador is a big producer of bananas, and setting up these front companies allowed the Albanians to send to Europe tons and tons of cocaine hidden into cargoes full of bananas without detection. It means that Ecuador really was the perfect country with the perfect logistic, perfect facilities to allow a criminal background to operate in the region. And that's why also the Mexican were interested in into the country. As we say, we had the Sinaloa Sinaloa cartel and Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel. They're making wars in Mexico, but also in Ecuador. Don't forget that Albanians have a tradition working with Mexican. I want just to stress a case. This is the case of Sinaloa mobster Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who worked with the Albanian Isa Brothers clan, who established a money laundering partnership in Mexico. Since 2017 in Ecuador, there were some problems with Albanians. 3 members of the Balkan Mafia be killed, some from Montenegro and 2 other ones from Albania. None of the casualties, this is very important to stress, were identified as leaders. It means that even the Albanians now separate the leaders from the army. The army stay in Ecuador, and the leaders usually flee to Dubai. One of the most famous drug trafficker is Arber Cekai. He was one of the earliest Albanians to arrive in the country, and he established a banana company in 2008, which would help the drug lords clean up their proceeds by using ships and to transport cocaine.
Maria, thanks for that overview. Going back to the current situation, how effective do you think the military and law enforcement involvement has been in addressing the security situation? And what do you think was the government's response? Do you think it was effective in the situation?
It's very early to make a judgment about the recent policies that are being set up in the country. For sure, Noboa it's clear. Noboa wants to follow Bukele footsteps. A strong approach, a government that is firmly believe in punishment. Noboa already said that you want to create several maximum security prisons. So actually, is a response. It's very similar to Bukele response. The problem is that there are a lot of interests inside the country. All the presidents before Noboa tried to solve the issue of drug trafficking, the results were really bad. Let's start from Rafael Correa. As you know, one of the first choices that he made was to close down the US military base in Manta, and he discontinued cooperation with DIA. So the choice was really clear. The results was really bad because Ecuador's maritime exclusive economic zone was left without surveillance, allowing narco vessels to migrate from Peruvian and Colombian waters. Also, Correa granted private owners concessions to ports and airports, making enforcement of cargo screening regulation very, very challenging. After Correa, the situation did not improve at all, because former President Lenin Moreno's security policy from 2017 to 2021 actually led to the dismantlement of the Correa Ministry of Justice and the establishment of a new agency that quickly lost control of the country's prisons. Ecuador is very similar to Brazil. Many of criminal groups were created inside the prison. So the prison actually are places of crime. That's why Noboa now say that you want to set up, to build up maximum security prisons, because the problem is that in Ecuador for years, they use drones to carry drugs and mobiles inside the prisons. So this is one of the weakest points of the security strategy that needs to be changed. And then we had the Guillermo Lasso government. He held a referendum on constitutional reforms to tackle crime, but the proposed changes actually led to the death of the referendum. The referendum was completely unuseful. So Lasso tried to make some changes to the country's law to address crime. For example, he legalized the possession of firearms for self-defense. He tried to give the military a more significant role, but the results was really bad because there were some rumors that the Albanian mafia infiltrated Lasso's inner circle and the military. Don't forget that Ecuador, like many other countries in Latin America, is a country where corruption is a huge problem. And when you have corruption inside institutions, it's very hard, it's very difficult to set up security policies, because you have vulnerable parts of the chain, and these vulnerable parts of the chain actually allow the crime to take power, to be more powerful than the government. So
right, very clear. In a recent article published by Primicias, they claim that choneros are back in alliance with the tigreones and chon killers. What does that mean? How important is Fito's role, the leader of choneros? Rumors say that he could be hiding in Bolivia. And one last thing, how are the alliances changing?
For sure, as I said, the government accounted for 22 criminal groups. It's a huge landscape, a very scattered landscape. That's why behind these small criminal groups, we have Mexican cartels, Italian mafia, Albanian mafia, that are much more structured criminal groups. So the fact that there are new alliances is something that is not new in the scenario, but in my opinion, the change of alliance doesn't change the situation of the scenario. What is important, in my opinion, is that we are seeing movement outside Ecuador. The idea that Fito probably is hiding in Bolivia means that all the region actually is concerned by the security changes happening in Ecuador. For example, if the government will be very strong in its response in the next months, if scanners will be set up in more parts all over the country, it's possible that Mexican cartels, along with Italian mafia, decide to move in a massive way their operation in other countries, for example, Brazil, where there is already an infrastructure, but where Mexican cartels are just at the beginning of their criminal presence. So Ecuador is crucial because he has an ocean like Brazil. Bolivia, as we know, is just a country that produces cocaine, but is not interesting in terms of logistics for the international markets. So what we can expect is that with this criminal scenario, with mobster leaving the country, probably the Ecuador issue will grow up in other countries like Brazil, like Argentina, probably Uruguay, which is booming in terms of drug trafficking. This situation wake up a lot of alerts around the world. The United States were directly concerned because when we have Mexican cartels, we can have fentanyl, we can have drugs that are smuggled into the United States. So that's why the General Richardson, the Southern Command chief, went to Ecuador at the end of January, and she promised an aid package worth around 93 million US dollar. And United States also agreed to increase military cooperation with Ecuador through joint operation, and also increase intelligence sharing with the help of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Some experts try to make comparison between the Plan Colombia and the Plan Ecuador. As you know, Plan Colombia was really successful in terms of countering the violence, especially against the FARC, but it largely failed to undermine organized crime. I mean, Colombia is still active in terms of drug trafficking. But the difference is very strong. First of all, because don't forget that the Plan Colombia provided Colombia around 600, 700 million per year, while the proposed aid to Ecuador is just 100 million. So the size, the scope is totally different. I think that the next months will be really useful to see what's going to happen in Ecuador, and to see if this violence, this wave of violence of drug trafficking will move in a very massive way to other countries. Really, we don't know, but experts are expecting changes in the region scenario.
Perfect. Great. Thanks very much, Maria, for the exhaustive explanation, and we hope to have you again with us very soon. And thanks everyone for being here.